We're going to be working in lesson 1-7 today. So we're going to be working on the distributive property, okay? So now the distributive property is where we multiply the outside number by what is inside the set of parentheses, okay? So when we look at example 1a here, we're going to take the 3, because it's outside, and we are going to distribute it or multiply it by what's on the inside. So 3 times x will be 3x, and 3 times 8 is 24. So you get 3x plus 24. Okay, on B, it's the same thing. It does not matter if they put the number out back. You're still going to go ahead and drop it into both parts inside the parentheses there. So you're going to take 5 times 7 and get 35b. Minus 4 times 7, which is 28. So again, doesn't matter if it's front or back. All right, now on this guy, same thing. We're going to take the 12 and distribute it. We are going to deal with a fraction. So we'll take the 12 times the 3 and get 36 minus. Now 12 times 1/6. If you've got to do a little scratch work off to the side, go ahead and do that. Remember, 12 would go over a 1, and then you could cross cancel. This would go to a 2 and a 1, so you'll end up with 2y. All right, and on D here, this negative out front right here, this guy right here, I need you to think of it as a -1, okay? So when we are distributing, we are basically just flipping our signs or taking -1 times -x and getting a positive x. Now that would be the same thing as if you put a 1x. Both of those would be acceptable. And then you're going to take that -1 and multiply it to the 36 and get -36. So your answer is going to be x minus 36 or 1x minus 36. Okay, so now on example 2, this is very similar to what we are doing here. The difference is, though, we are now going to divide by that number instead of multiply by that number. So when we look at example A here, what this is saying is, it is saying take the 7 and divide it by the 5. Now, we know that 5 doesn't go into 7 easily, so we would just write 7/5 x. It's the same thing here. Then you'll take the 5 and divide it by the 2. Now again, 5 doesn't go into 2 evenly, so you're going to end up with just plus 2/5. All right, let's go to B here. Okay, so now B would be the same thing. You're going to go ahead and rewrite it as 4/8 minus 2/8. And then it doesn't really matter if you put the x on the top or you could put it onto the side. It would be the same thing. Now, we do expect you, though, to reduce fractions. On the last problem, those didn't reduce. But these guys reduce, so we would expect you to call 4/8 1/2. And then 2/8 would be 1/4 x. And that would be your answer. All right, so now if you go to C, in fact, why don't you go ahead and pause the video now and try C on your own. Okay, so when you were doing this problem, you should have taken the 4x and divided it by the 4, and the 16 and divided it by the 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, so 1x or x. Again, I don't care if you put the 1 there in front. Minus, and then 16 divided by 4 would be 4. So again, we still expect you to go ahead and reduce those fractions, okay? And so this guy right here would be your answer. Again, we don't care if you put a 1 in front or not. All right, now we have a little vocab here, okay? We have what's called a term. A term is simply a number, a variable, or when I multiply, right? Product means multiply. A number and a variable. So again, a number, a variable, or when we multiply it. So if we're kind of thinking about this a little bit, so a number, some examples would be like a number, like 2, 1/2, a variable, x, a, or when you multiply them together. So I could have like 2x. I could have 1/2 a, and then exponents would be fine. You can do that because exponents is technically multiplication. You also, we've got all pauses here. It could be a -7 and then like x, y. So there could be 2 variables there as well. So that's what a term is, a number, a variable, or when I multiply the 2 together. A constant is a term that has no variable. So an example, 2 1/2. Those are examples of constants. There's no variable involved. Okay, our next vocab word is a coefficient, the numerical factor of a term. Now, what we would really say in class is just, it's the number in front of a variable. So when we're looking back up at some of these examples right here, the number in front of the variable here would be a 2. So your coefficient would be 2. This guy would be a half, coefficient of a half. This guy would be -7. So coefficient, just the number in front, okay? And then we have what's called like terms, which they need to have the same variable, and in reality, it could be variables. It doesn't have to be one, so it could be more than one. So it can have the same variable or variables with the same exponent, okay? So if I have something like 3x, that would be, a like term would be like 4x, okay? Now, if I have like 1/3 y, and then I have 3y squared, those will not work because you have different exponents, okay? There's, well, technically a 1 there, but there's nothing there for right now, and there's a 2 there. All right, let's go to the next page. All right, so on this one, we're going to be asked to simplify the expression. So in other words, we're going to start by combining like terms. So when I look at A here, I know they're like terms because they have the same variable with the same exponent. So we're just going to add the coefficients, right? The number in front of the variable. We're going to add those up. So 8 plus 2 is 10, and then the x squared just stays as is. Okay, so now on this one, again, combine like terms. Order's not important, just as long as you get all the things that match up together. So I'm going to start by putting together the 5 and the -3. Now make sure you keep that negative sign in front of that 3. Okay, so 5 and -3 would be a 2x. All right, and then what else could I combine? I can combine the -3 and the -4. Now this poor little guy, this 6y, he doesn't have a buddy. So he's going to go ahead, and I'm just going to write down plus 6y. And then I'm going to go ahead and put together the -3 and the -4. So -3 and -4 would be -7. And that right there is going to be my answer. Okay, so on C, the reason I put C in there is I just want to make sure that we're all clear that anytime you've got a variable, there is always a 1 in front. So this is actually saying 3y minus 1y, which would be 2y. Okay, so now on this guy, now we're going to start putting together the ideas of distributing and combining like terms. So you're always going to want to distribute first, so we're going to go ahead and push that 2 through first. So I'm going to get 14 y to the third z minus 12 y z to the third. And then I'm not distributing to this guy because he's outside the parentheses, but I will go ahead and write him in down here. So then I've got plus y to the third z. All right, so now I have to be careful here. When you combine like terms, you have to pick the same exponent with the same letter. So in this case, the 14 will go together, and so will technically the 1 here in front. Oops, wrong one. The 1 here in front would go together. Okay, now these guys again are not the same because y to the third, this guy has a y to the first. There is no third. Z to the third. So they are not the same. You can't put those two together. So I'm going to go ahead and add 14 and 1 and get 15 y to the third z minus 12 y z to the third. And that's going to be my final answer there because I cannot put those together since they are not like terms. All right, so moving on to the next guy here. Now this guy has a double distributing. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 2 through to the first set of parentheses, and I'm going to distribute the 5 through to the second set of parentheses. So I'm going to get 12v minus 8, and then I'm going to distribute the 5 through and get negative 10v plus 30. Now I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. So I'm going to start by putting my v's together. So 12v minus 10v is 2v, and then I have got negative 8 and a positive 30. So now when I combine those together, I'm going to end up with a positive 22. Again, different signs we subtract, and then since we have more positives, the answer is positive. So 2v plus 22. is going to be your final answer. Again, I cannot put these together because there's not a V on this guy. All right, go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try F on your own. Okay, so first thing you should have done is you should have distributed that 4 through to the first part there. So you've got 20y minus 8. Now be careful on this middle guy here. This is not a 6, it's a negative 6. So you need to distribute the negative 6 through. So I'm going to distribute that through, and I'm going to get negative 18y, and then a negative times a negative is a positive 42. So now combine like terms, put the 20y and the negative 18 together, and you're going to end up with 2y. And then on this next guy here, we're going to put the negative 8 and the 42 together. So 42 minus 8 is 34. So we will have plus 34, and that will be your final answer. All right, and our last example here, example 4, it says find the area and the perimeter of the rectangle. Okay, so now area would be technically length times width, or 3 times 9w plus 4. So now you are going to have to distribute here. And so when I distribute, I'm going to push that 3 through and get 27w plus 12. So that's going to be my area. Okay. All right, so now let's go back here. We now need to think of perimeter. So perimeter is just where we add up all the sides. So I know that if the bottom's 3, the top's going to be 3. If the right-hand side is 9w plus 4, this guy over here is going to be 9w plus 4. Okay? So now we're going to add up all the sides. So basically just combine like terms. So 9w plus 9w will be 18w. Right? 9 plus 9 is 18. And then on the next one here, I'm going to put the 4, the 3, the 4, and the 3 together. So 4 plus 3 is 7. So 7 and 7 would be 14. Oops. So I have 18w plus 14. And that's going to be my perimeter. So perimeter, again, add up all the sides, area, length, times width, or distribute. Okay, that concludes the notes for lesson 1-7.